Yo, what's good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson. I am your host. And in this episode, we are going to be doing a Week 3 recap of all the games across the NFL for Week 3 of the 2024 season. Before we get into any of that, though, please make sure to subscribe to the channel or follow wherever you are listening so you can stay tuned for more episodes and become a Fantasy Football Prodigy. I am recording this on September 25th. 2024, and week 3 was definitely an interesting one. There were some highs and some lows. A lot of players that we wanted to perform did not, but there was a little bit of fantasy goodness. I heard some people complaining about it, but I believe I went undefeated on the week. So hey man, here at the FFP channel, we're able to overcome all obstacles. I'm recording this episode on September 25th, 2024. And let's get into the recap of Week 3. We're going to start with the Thursday night football game between the Jets and the Patriots. Jets at home took down the Patriots 24-3. The Jets are now 2-1. The Patriots are 1-2. Aaron Rodgers looked really great in this performance. He was 27 of 35, 281 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In the rushing game, Breece Hall had 16 for 54 and a touchdown on the ground, but Braylon Allen, rookie running back, dropped a little bit in the draft of the 4th round. He is carving out a role in this offense. He had 11 carries for 55 yards, and he's been involved recently. And not only is he a great handcuff where if something were to happen to Breece Hall, Braylon Allen would become a really good running back play, but he might be a flex play each and every week just, based on his own usage alone. But Aaron Rodgers, he was a quarterback 10 on the week. Braylon Allen, we'll look up his running backs here. I'm going to use half PPR stats. I feel like that's kind of the most common format nowadays. So Breece Hall was the running back 12 on the week with 16.3 points. And then Braylon Allen, he was the running back 29 with 8.3 points. But if you're looking for a flex guy, he is someone that is worth considering, and he should definitely be rostered in all leagues just because of his handcuff potential. Tyler Conklin at tight end had actually a really good game. We were kind of waiting for him to maybe have some sort of good performance, and he never really did through the first 2 weeks. But in week 3, 5 for 93. We like to see that usage. Hopefully he's someone that we can stream moving forward. But he was a tight end 4 on the week with 11.8 points. And then Alan Lazard had a really good week 1 in terms of fantasy production. He had that late touchdown at the end, but he finished with 2 touchdowns in week 1. Didn't do much in week 2, and then week 3, 3 for 48 and a touchdown on 3 targets. Mike Williams, his usage is ramping up. He saw 4 targets in this one after not really playing a lot the first couple weeks. Ended up only 3 for 34, but someone to monitor moving forward. And then Garrett Wilson saw 9 targets, only turned into 5 for 33. He did get a touchdown, though, which saved his fantasy day. But Garrett Wilson has been a little disappointing for fantasy so far. But it's good to see Aaron Rodgers and this offense clicking in this game. And hopefully that's a sign of things to come for the Jets. Although I don't have any Jets really on any of my fantasy teams. I don't think so. Personally, I'm not that invested. But Breece Hall did also add 4 for 29 through the air on 5 targets, which is great to see. And then Braylon Allen, fellow running back, also saw 3 targets, caught 3 for 13. So Breece is obviously the superstar. I'm not concerned about Breece Hall being a running back 1, obviously, but Braylon Allen getting a role, it might kind of limit Breece Hall's number 1 overall running back upside. If if Braylon Allen is going to come in and get some passes, maybe get a touchdown here or there like he did against Tennessee last week. So on the other side, Jacoby Brissett, 12 of 18, 98 yards. The rookie Drake May came in, was 4 for 8, 22 yards. Not a lot of offense over there, obviously. Ramondre Stevenson, it was a dreadful game. He finished 6 for 23 on the ground, and I don't think he had any production in the passing game. So he also had a fumble in this game, so he finished with 0.3 points. That's 0.3 on Thursday Night Football. I had him in a lineup, and I did end up getting the victory, but that is a very rough start. Antonio Gibson, who they brought in free agency as a running back, was 5 of 29. And he had 3 targets, turned into 3 for 8. And in the receiving game, it was pretty ugly. I mean, Demario Douglas had 9 targets, turned into 7 for 69. But after that, I mean, Austin Hooper, 1 for 19. Jalen Polk, 2 for 13. Hunter Henry, 2 for 9. There's really no one in this passing game that you want to start. And moving forward, it's pretty much Ramondre Stevenson and then log out. Maybe if Demario Douglas puts together a couple weeks here where he's a little bit more consistent, we can rely on him as like a PPR guy, but it's pretty much Ramondre and then just stop looking at it. Maybe Gibson in like a really deep league. But our next matchup here, the New York Giants on the road in Cleveland. The Giants beat the Browns 21-15. The Giants are 1-2, same record as the Cleveland Browns. Daniel Jones has been actually very solid for fantasy after that week 1 slaughter against my Minnesota Vikings. He was a quarterback 11 on the week for the Giants with 19.4 points, 24 of 34, 236 and 2 through the air, no interceptions. On the ground, Devin Singletary was 16 of 65 and a touchdown. He's a guy that is looking like you can play in the right matchups. I know maybe the Browns matchup on the road was a little intimidating, so a lot of people might not have started him, but he was a running back 10 on the week with 16.8 points. And if Daniel Jones can just kind of not be that, embarrassment of a quarterback that he can be sometimes. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but there are times where people are just kind of making fun of him. If he can just kind of keep the offense going, Singletary's going to have his weeks. Malik Neighbors, superstar wide receiver, dude. He is on fire. He's having one of the best starts to a rookie season in NFL history. Had another great fantasy game, 8 for 78 and 2 touchdowns through the air. They also gave him a couple carries. Only took those 2 carries for 4 yards, but that's interesting usage there. I mean, the more touches, the better for Neighbors, and he's the guy here. He was a wide receiver 3 on the week with 24.2 points in half PPR. Wan'Dale Robinson got involved in this one as well, as he does from time to time. It saw 8 targets, turned into 7 for 61. He's a guy that from time to time, he can be spot started, especially in PPR leagues. Not someone I want to rely on, but he does have his weeks. And then I forgot to mention Devin Singletary also saw 4 for 43 through the air, which is very encouraging. Not a lot of production in the passing game outside of those guys. Darius Slayton was 1 for 7. Bellinger 1 for 17 at tight end. So not much there. So for the Giants, it's pretty much Daniel Jones as a streamer. Singletary can be played in the right matchups, or if you don't have like a stud running back. And Malik Neighbors is an auto start at this point, regardless of matchup. For the Browns, Deshaun Watson was 21 of 37, 196 and 2 touchdowns. He did actually connect with Amari Cooper in this game, though, which we're going to talk about in a little bit when we get to there. But 16.4 fantasy points for Watson. It's not, he hasn't looked great, obviously, but he's been getting the ball to some of his weapons a little bit here, more than worst case scenario type level. So in the running game, Jerome Ford was 10 for 37. We saw Deontay Foreman kind of lead the backfield in carries in week 2. So I was interested to see how this split played out. But Ford was the guy again. Foreman only 2 for 5 on the ground. Ford also added 3 for 33 on 4 targets where Foreman didn't get any targets. So it looks like Jerome Ford is still the guy, which I think is the right call. It was interesting usage last week. But Amari Cooper, he finally had himself a good game here. He had the targets, and we know he's a great player, but weeks 1 and 2, it just did not come together, whether it was them not connecting on his healthy amount of targets or Amari Cooper just having some bad drops. But in this game, it was a get-right game for a guy that was a buy low. He had 12 targets, turned into 7 for 86 and 2 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 4 on the week, 0.1 points behind Malik Neighbors on the other side of the field. And after him, I mean, Jerry Jeudy saw 7 targets, only turned into 4 for 27. Elijah Moore is still hanging around over there. Saw 3 targets, turned into 2 for 17. So for the Browns, Watson, you can maybe stream in the right matchup. I wouldn't want to unless it's like a 2-quarterback league. Jerome Ford appears to be the guy there. The offense wasn't really clicking in this one, only 15 points on the board. So not a ton of opportunity for Ford there. But Amari Cooper is definitely a guy that should probably be started most weeks unless it's like a dreadful matchup like, I don't know, if they're playing the Broncos and he's lined up against Patrick Surtain or something like that, And I don't even know who the Browns play coming up here. They play the Raiders, so I think you should probably be playing Amari Cooper. Next matchup, the Packers, Green Bay Packers in Tennessee against the Titans. Packers get the road win. They lost in week 1 against the Eagles in that Brazil game. And then the next 2 games without Jordan Love, who got injured in that game. Malik Willis at the helm. They have won their last couple games, and this was a revenge game for Malik Willis, formerly a Tennessee Titan. The Packers got the win 30-14. It wasn't close. The Titans are now 0-3. Packers 2-1. And Malik Willis, I mean, look, he looked absolutely terrible. He looked like his career was over. There was no point in even signing him to a roster. And then he gets to Green Bay right before the season starts, is thrust into a starting role. And this coaching staff and this team and Malik himself, they've put him in a good position, and he's done the work where he's been solid as an NFL quarterback. And even for fantasy, he was the quarterback 6 on the week. He had 25.4 points according to Fantasy Pro scoring. He was 13 of 19 through the air, 202 and a touchdown. He also added 6 for 73 on the ground and also ran in a rushing touchdown. So not a guy that I really want to get in my lineup, but you know, it's good to know for the Packers' sake. I mean, I'm a Vikings fan, so of course it works out this way for the Packers. But you know, when Jordan Love is out, this offense is not going to completely sputter. I will say though, the passing weapons have definitely taken a hit without Jordan Love, but the team itself is still winning. And Jordan Love, there's a really good chance that he comes back in week 4. So the Malik Willis show might be over. But in the running game, Josh Jacobs was 14 of 43, very disappointing. He only saw 1 target, caught it for 5. Pardon me. Whoa, almost talk about the Packers. I almost got sick. But he caught it for 5 yards. Was the running back 44 on the week with 5.3 points. Sorry, guys. I ate a Juicy Lucy burger earlier today. I don't know, my Minnesota people, where you at? I went to the Nook, had a Juicy Lucy burger, and man, it's killing me right now. But anyway, he was 14 of 43. But interesting, backup running back Emmanuel Wilson, 12 for 50 on the ground. So you know, to start the year, Jacobs was kind of getting all the work. But you know, in week 3 here, it was kind of good to see a committee approach. That's more what the Packers are. That's more kind of what they want to do, I believe. I shouldn't necessarily say that's good, because if you have Josh Jacobs, you kind of want him to get the bulk of the workload, although it could preserve his health. But Wilson also had a 2 for 35 through the air. Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie they drafted at running back, is on injured reserve. So when he comes back, it'll be interesting to see who is the leader of the backup role, if that makes sense. But at least in the meantime, Wilson is going to have, you know, some sort of role, it looks like, and be a handcuff to Josh Jacobs. But Wilson was the running back 14 on the week with 15.5 points. So very, probably should be picked up in most leagues. The receiving game, Christian Watson only had 2 targets, turned into 2 for 67. He had a long 37-yard catch in there. He's a free agent in one of my leagues I'm in. I'm waiting for some people to get ruled out before I pick him up, but he's someone that I think with Jordan Love returning might be worth picking up just to see what happens, because week 1, it's a 1-week sample size. He didn't have a good game, even though he got in the end zone. And then weeks 2 and 3, I kind of throw out because Malik Willis was the quarterback, but he's a talented guy. So I think he's worth picking up potentially if you have the roster space, not a must pick up, but he's explosive enough where he could surprise and be relevant when Jordan Love comes back. And then Jaden Reed, after that wide receiver 1 overall performance in week 1, where he was on my bench and a lot of your benches, it's been a little rough with Malik Willis at quarterback. He was 4 for 50. He saw 6 targets. He'll be much better once Jordan Love is back. And then Romeo Doubs, you know, he's another guy that is in that receiving core that is worth mentioning. He was only 1 for 18, saw 2 targets. So Watson and Jaden Reed right now are the 2 guys I would want. And then for the Titans, Will Levis continues to not help the Titans win. He was 26 of 34, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, also added 2 interceptions. Quarterback 18 on the week. With 15.6 points. Tony Pollard, this was a really good spot for him. I made him a start of the week, and he did not deliver. He was 6 of 14 on the ground. They weren't able to establish the run, especially losing a lot of this game. 6 for 14 on the ground. And then did he have any product? He had 4 targets, turned into 3 for 15 through the air. Tajay Spears is still the clear backup. He was 2 for 7 on the ground. And he had 4 for 54 through the air on 4 targets. So he's an interesting guy where I have him rostered in 1 league, and I don't want to roster him, but he is also a really good handcuff where if something were to happen to Tony Pollard, he would become the starting running back and probably be good, especially in PPR leagues. So I would probably try to hold on to him just in case, but he's not a must roster. He's kind of in the same category as like a Braylon Allen or one of those handcuff guys that kind of has a role. In the passing game, DeAndre Hopkins was the alpha wide receiver in this one. He had a rough week 1 and 2 coming back from that injury, but they've slowly been ramping him back up, kind of like Mike Williams. And he was awesome in this one. He still only played 46% of the offensive snaps, but that turned into 7 targets, 6 for 73, and a touchdown. Whereas Calvin Ridley, coming off of that big week 2 performance, he was only 1 for 9 in this one on 3 targets. Ridley still saw 72% of the snaps, and I do think he's the guy to roster here. But as Hopkins comes back more and more, the situation might just get more messy, especially, you know, as unless Will Levis can kind of improve his play a little bit and this offense can get clicking and supply production to multiple receivers. Tyler Boyd, who they brought in free agency, 70% of the snaps, turned into 3 for 33 on 4 targets. Other than that, I mean, Nick Vannett caught a touchdown, 2 for 9. I hope Hopkins can kind of get some of his value back after that slow start to the year. I have him in Dynasty. I think it was my first ever first round pick that I made, which is kind of cool. I know he was on the waiver wire in one of my leagues, so I picked him up after this performance because I think he's going to have his games. It might be inconsistent because I think Calvin Ridley is still going to probably be the one you want to roster here, but he was a wide receiver 16 on the week with 16.3 points. So good to see some life out of DeAndre Hopkins there, whereas Calvin Ridley was a complete bust. But I think he's going to be the type of guy where you put him in your lineup most weeks, maybe avoid him in really bad matchups, but you know, Calvin Ridley's going to have his good games and he's going to have his bad games because this offense isn't really clicking right now. Moving on, the Bears on the road against the Colts. Colts get the win at home, 21-16 over the Bears. Both teams 1-2. Anthony Richardson, another kind of dreadful game for fantasy here and real life. Not completing many of his passes here. 10 for 20, 167 yards, no touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. He only added 8 for 24 on the ground. So Anthony Richardson at this point is not a must start. He always has week winning potential, so I wouldn't put him on the bench for someone that you're not super confident in otherwise. But if you have a reliable option, he might be worth putting in there because this is back-to-back weeks where he's just absolutely killed your lineup. Jonathan Taylor, though, he's been really great for fantasy. He has exceeded my expectations. I have him in my Dynasty League, and he's been awesome. He was the running back 4 on the week. 26 points, 23 for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also added 1 for 25 through the air on 2 targets. Trey Sermon got in there, only got a couple carries. He's the backup there, but turned into 2 for 16 and had a rushing touchdown. I remember watching that live, and I was like, no, why would you give it to him? Kamara could have had 3, or Kamara. Whoa. Kamara did have 3 at one point this year, more than 3, but Jonathan Taylor could have had 3. And then these wide receiver weapons just continue to suffer with this subpar quarterback play. Alec Pierce, 1 for 44. He had a couple targets. He's a deep threat, but if they don't connect, it's not going to work out. And even here, he connected on a 44-yard pass, and okay, he was still not really good for fantasy. Kyle Granson got in there, 1 for 40. Michael Pittman saw 5 targets, 4 for 36. Pittman is no longer a must start. He just, you know, if Joe Flacco gets in there at some point, like if Richardson ever were to go down with an injury, Pittman would be much more intriguing, but it's just not working out. And there's really no upside with him at this point because he's not getting valuable targets, and even the ones that he's getting, there are a lot of them are not connecting. It's just not working out. And Josh Downs is back playing football. He saw 5 targets, turned into 3 for 22. So it's even more murky now with another weapon there. And both quarterbacks, both offenses just did not look good in this game. Caleb Williams, he did finish good for fantasy. 363, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was let's find him here. He was the quarterback, 14 on the week with 19.3 points. So startable, but it was the box score looks better than how the game actually looked and how he actually played. It wasn't great. He had a 1 for 8 on the ground as well. In the running game, DeAndre Swift continues to struggle. He's been really, really bad for fantasy and for the Bears. 13 for 20 on the ground. I mean, he's just not getting anything going on the ground right now. Roshan Johnson, a name to monitor. He got some work in this one. He's a second-year player, 8 for 30 on the ground. He's worth picking up in deeper leagues or stashing if you have the roster space. I have him in my Dynasty League because I thought, you know, maybe he could carve out a role because I didn't really believe that DeAndre Swift was going to come in here and, like, you know, be great. A lot of people are saying he's kind of like the Miles Sanders of this season where he got a big bag in free agency and it's just not working out. So Yeah, Roshan Johnson, a name to monitor, and DeAndre Swift is someone who should probably be on benches unless you're really desperate. Rome Odunze got in there. No Keenan Allen at wide receiver, so it was Rome Odunze and DJ Moore out wide. Odunze had a great game, saw 11 targets, turned into 6 for 112 and 1 touchdown. He was the wide receiver 7 on the week with 20.4 points. And then DJ Moore, he finished okay. He saw 10 targets and it turned into 8 for 78. But important to note, one of those catches was like, I believe it was a 44-yard Hail Mary, and he got tackled at the 1, like he caught it at the 1 yard line and then got held up and tackled. You know, if he doesn't catch that pass, you know, he's like 7 for 34 or whatever. So, you know, he made the play and it counts, but you don't want to rely on a Hail Mary for a guy to finish as the wide receiver 33 with 11.2 points. So, you know, I have him on my dynasty team, and my thought is like, you know, he's going to be good as Caleb Williams gets better and better. You know, Keenan Allen isn't going to be there forever. You know, and next year and beyond, he's probably going to be really good for fantasy. But this year, there's going to be inconsistencies with the rookie quarterback play and the crowded receiving room. And I'm in a kind of a win now mode. So I'm almost considering, you know, trading him for someone that's going to help me a little bit more this year and maybe sacrifice that youth that he still somewhat has. I believe he's 27, or sacrifice that like kind of long-term upside that he has. But he's definitely not someone that I want to get rid of in dynasty, but only, you know, if a really good trade comes through where I can get a player that's going to really put my team over the top, because right now he's not really making a difference for my team. Someone who did make a difference this week though, Cole Kmet. It was weird, man. He started the year and it looked like he was the backup behind Gerald Everett, but I don't know. Someone in our dynasty league, he traded a 1st-round pick for Cole Kmet and like a 4th-round pick. It was very weird. We were saying in the group chat it was one of the worst trades ever executed in our league, but he was a tight end 2 this week. 11 targets, turned into 10 for 97 and a touchdown, 20.7 points in half PPR. Someone that's going to be streamable moving forward. Meanwhile, Gerald Everett was 0 catches on 1 target. DeAndre Swift also had 4 targets, turned into 2 for 22. Roshan Johnson saw 5 targets, turned into 4 for 32. So, yeah, it's very, I don't know. Right now, it's not an offense you really want a lot of pieces of. But we need some clarity there of like, you know, consolidation of targets or touches, and we really need Caleb Williams to play a little bit better here. Although at least, even though he played not the greatest, there were still some counting stats that mounted up in this. So that's a good step in the right direction. Next game, my Minnesota Vikings took down the Houston Texans at home, 34-7. This game was over before it started, really. My Vikings are now 3-0. Texans are 2-1. The Vikings defense just looks incredible. And Sam Darnold, he's been nothing short of incredible for this team. He was 17 of 28. No Jordan Addison, still no TJ Hawkinson. And he completed 17 of 28, 181 yards, and 4 passing touchdowns. Quarterback 9 on the week, 23.2 points. He's doing what he needs to do to keep this team afloat. And, you know, the defense is really carrying, but Sam Darnold is making the right plays. He's had a couple kind of decisions where you're like, whoa, Sam, like, let's calm down. Just a couple. But so far, it's working out for fantasy, and it's really helping Justin Jefferson, having a quarterback that can get him the ball. Obviously, we were all worried with Kirk Cousins leaving. Can, you know, Sam Darnold, who he's been a bust so far in his career, or can the rookie JJ McCarthy come in and supply Jefferson with what he needs to be productive for fantasy? And they really have. I mean, Jefferson was 6 for 81 and a touchdown on 8 targets, and it's been working so far. With no Addison in there, Jalen Naylor has been filling in. He saw 4 targets, turned into 3 for 31 and a touchdown. He's been finding the end zone, worth picking up in deeper leagues and definitely dynasty. Aaron Jones on the ground, 19 for 102, had 5 for 46 on a touchdown through the air, saw 6 targets, so you love that. On the week, Aaron Jones was the running back 7 with 23.3 points. And then Justin Jefferson here, he finished as the wide receiver 14 with 17.1 points. So it's great that the offense is clicking. And hopefully Sam Darnold can keep it going. You know, week 1 was against the Giants, so we were kind of like, well, it's the Giants. Week 2 was against the 49ers, and it's like, okay, that's a great team, but any given Sunday, anyone could beat anyone. This was another really good test against a really good team, and the Vikings passed with flying colors. So I'm very confident in the Vikings and their fantasy options unless Sam Darnold just crumbles. Another note, name to monitor here, Ty Chandler, 7 for 13 on the ground, backup running back, just kind of a handcuff to Aaron Jones, who has dealt with injuries in the past. So if Jones were to go down, I think Ty Chandler would become the number one pickup of the week. So if you have the roster space, try to stash him. On the other side of the field here, CJ Stroud, 20 for 31, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. It just really wasn't a great game for Stroud. I picked him up in my survivor pool and I played him over Brock Purdy, who I had been starting. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, Stroud has this tough matchup, but he's CJ Stroud. I have to play him. And, you know, that was not the right play. Like, I had Daniel Jones as well, who would have been a better play. Brock Purdy would have been a better play. And I was one of the lowest scoring teams, but we did survive. But Stroud at this point, you know, if you have him, you're probably starting, but I do think he's going to have his inconsistencies, as we've seen. Cam Akers on the ground, filling in for injured Joe Mixon. So no Joe Mixon, no Dameon Pierce. Cam Akers got the start, 9 for 21 on the ground. I spot started him in a league, and luckily he did catch one of his 3 targets for an 8-yard touchdown. So that did kind of help his day. Still wasn't great, but they really just didn't even have a chance to try to run the ball because this game was out of hand very early, and this Vikings defense is just ferocious. In the receiving game, Stephon Diggs saw 12 targets in a little revenge game, turned into 10 for 94. He's not seeing a ton of like downfield targets, it seems like. That's more Nico Collins and Tank Dell, but yeah, Stephon Diggs, all these guys have a role. It's going to fluctuate who is the guy to have, but I think Nico Collins is really the one that you want, even though Diggs did outscore him in this game. Stephon Diggs was the wide receiver 19 on the week with 14.9 points, and Nico was the wide receiver 35 with 10.6. Nico had an okay game given the circumstances. He was 4 for 86 through the air. He saw 10 targets, so only caught 4 of them. I do believe on that last drive when Davis Mills, backup quarterback, came into the game, I believe they targeted him on 4 consecutive end zone targets and didn't connect on them. It was like 3 or 4. It was something crazy. So that added to his target total and didn't add to his receiving line. But even if they connected on 1, you're a lot happier there if he, you know, finishes like 5 for 90 something in a touchdown. But don't panic about him. And then Tank Dell also like had a solid but not, you know, great game. He was the wide receiver 43 on the week with 8.7 points. Saw 6 targets, turned into 5 for 62. He hasn't quite had a big blow-up game yet, but he is still someone that I am confident will have better games ahead. I have him in a few leagues, and I traded him away before this week for Zay Flowers. Not someone that I was actively trying to get rid of, but I'm in the same league as this one guy in 2 leagues, and he sent me 2 separate trades. So in a non-PPR league, I give him Tank Dell. He gives me Calvin Ridley, I think it was. I turned that one down, but then in another half PPR league, he wanted Tank Dell and I would get Zay Flowers. So I was cool with that trade. I like both of those players, but I just don't have any shares of Zay Flowers, and I think I would kind of slightly prefer him. So I just went with it. And, you know, even if Tank Dell is the better play there, at least I have Tank Dell in some other leagues where I will, you know, enjoy having him there. Just kind of wanted to diversify a little bit. But I wouldn't have like made that trade unless it was sent to me. Dalton Schultz, 2 for 11, 5 targets. Not a great game for the tight end there. So yeah, when you have a lot of weapons like this, it's going to be inconsistent. And, you know, when your team puts up 7 points, it's going to be even more inconsistent and downright dreadful. Speaking of downright dreadful, this game did not go the way we hoped. New Orleans Saints hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles get the win 15-12. Both teams are 2-1. This was supposed to be a high scoring game, and it absolutely was not. We'll start with the winner. Jalen Hurts here. Very disappointing for fantasy. No A.J. Brown in this game. Devontae Smith did leave this game early with kind of a nasty concussion. I think it was a concussion. The play was kind of ugly and borderline dirty. Classic Saints, Spountygate, am I right? But Jalen Hurts, 29 of 38, 311 yards, no touchdown passes, 1 interception. He only added 8 for 25 on the ground, and neither offense could really do much in this game, but Saquon Barkley could. Holy cow. I reluctantly drafted him in the first round at the end of the first or beginning of the second in one league. He wasn't someone that I was super targeting, but I got to a point where it's like, well, at this ADP, he's the best guy to draft. And all of the worries are gone. Like, this offensive line and this offense and this system, it's just working for Saquon Barkley. He's scoring a ton of touchdowns. Jalen Hurts hasn't been stealing any, and maybe that will happen at some point, but Saquon was the running back 1 on the week. Where is he finished? He was the running back 1, the running back 11 in week 2, and the running back 1 in week 3. So he has had 2 out of 3 weeks where he's been the number 1 overall running back. 17 for 147 and 2 on the ground. He ripped off a 65-yard run that was just crazy. Just so much burst and speed. It was insane. Just got me going. Only 4 for 9 through the air, but you do like the 4 targets there. Just didn't amount to much, but he is involved there. And yeah, he's a must start. Jalen Hurts, you're probably going to keep starting, but if Devontae Smith is out and if AJ Brown is out, it's going to be, it's not going to be great. And there might be options worth starting over him. In the receiving game, though, Devontae Smith, like I mentioned, 10 targets, 7 for 79. He thrives when AJ Brown isn't on the field, and he could have played more, obviously, if he didn't get injured. But 7 for 79, not electric, but didn't sink your week. He was 11.4 points, wide receiver 29. And then Britton Covey, he was kind of a deep pickup. He was only 1 for 11 this week. Paris Campbell was their second leading wide receiver, 2 for 13. So outside of Devontae Smith, I'm not starting any of these receivers, really. Unless they're all out, and then maybe there's one guy that we have to guess on who gets the production next week. But Dallas Goedert at tight end was the tight end 1 on the week. 10 for 170 on 11 targets, no touchdowns, but he had a 61-yard catch on the sideline where he caught it, and I swear, like, there was no one trying to tackle him. He just ran and ran and ran. Then they finally brought him down, but I believe I heard that was like his longest reception ever. He was on my bench for Kyle Pitts, who we'll talk about later. But Kyle Pitts was the tight end 9 on the week. Dallas Goedert was the tight end 1, but there was like a 15-point difference there. So I still won my matchup and was the highest scoring team on the week in that league. But yeah, I don't know how many people were starting Dallas Goedert. For the Saints, a lot of people bought into Derek Carr. He was one of my starts of the week. And it just didn't work, man. He came crashing down. 14 of 25, 142, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Just offenses could not get it going. He was not that it really matters, but he was the quarterback 29 on the week. So very, very poor. Alvin Kamara, he was one of my guys, and he's proving that, I should have been even more aggressive going after him. I have him in a lot of leagues, but in our dynasty league, I traded him away, and I got like Drake London and Jalen Hurts and Jalen Warren, and I gave up like Kamara and like some like late picks and something kind of not that valuable. And it was like such an easy trade to accept, but I still do wish I had Alvin Kamara. Like I still won the trade, but it's like, man, just points on the board. Kamara was the best player in that league. It's a dynasty league, so it's like he's an old running back, so he's not super valuable, but man, I loved him in redraft. And that team that I traded with is not doing so well. So I might reach out and be like, yo, I'll overpay for Kamara. I'll get him back because you overpaid for him. I'll overpay right back because he's a stud right now. Again, he doesn't need to be efficient on the ground. 26 carries only turned into 87 yards on the ground. He added 3 for 40 through the air. And I'm hyping him up like he had a great week. He was a running back 15 on the week, 14.2 points. But this is why we wanted Kamara, or at least why I was begging people to draft him at his ADP. This offense looked dreadful. They put up 12 points, and he was almost a running back 1. He's going to be great whenever he's healthy. He's going to see the volume, and he's an auto start. I don't know why people were so off of Alvin Kamara. It just didn't make sense to me. Chris Olave sighting at wide receiver, 6 for 86 and a touchdown, 6 targets. He's been a little disappointing with Derek Carr. That connection hasn't quite been there. So it was good to see them connect in a matchup where, I can't remember if I made him a start of the week or, here, let me actually go back. So I made him and Rashid Shaheed starts of the week. So Olave worked out. He was a wide receiver 12, 17.6 points. We love that. Whereas Rashid Shaheed did not work out. 0 catches, 0 yards. He had 5 targets, turned into nothing. Nothing really at tight end. I think Taysom Hill was out for this game. Jamal Williams only saw 1 carry, turned into -1 yards. Someone did start him against me, so thank you, Jamal. And yeah, the tight end game, nothing really happened. Foster Moreau was the leading tight end receiver with 1 catch for 2 yards on 2 targets. So not much there. Moving on, we got the Chargers and Steelers. The Steelers get the win at home. They look really good on defense. over the Chargers, 20-10. Steelers are now 3-0. Chargers are 2-1. The Steelers right now are kind of looking like the better version of what the Chargers want to be, if that makes sense. Justin Fields in this one, he's very widely available in a lot of leagues. I think he's definitely someone worth picking up. He isn't running as much as he was with the Bears. He's kind of managing the game a little better, but still, he was a quarterback 11 on the week, and he had 19.4 points in Fantasy Pro scoring. He was tied with Daniel Jones for quarterback 11. But if he does start to run a little bit more, you're going to wish you had him on your team. He's just someone that's kind of in like the streaming category, I would say. Najee Harris on the ground saw a ton of work, 18 for 70. He also added, 5 targets, caught all of them for only 16 yards. So, Najee Harris, it's never pretty with him, but especially later in the year, he kind of turns it on, it seems like. So he was a running back 20, 11.1 points. It's kind of like a Najee Harris stat line, but someone that, might be worth considering buying low on at some point, because at least it has happened where he turns it on later in the year. Jaylen Warren got banged up in this one. He was 3 for 5, caught his 1 target for -4 yards. So Cordero Patterson is someone to monitor on the waiver wire, maybe pick up in deeper leagues. I picked him up in my Dynasty League. He was 4 of 33 on the ground. He also added 5 targets, caught 3 of them for 15. So probably not someone I'm starting, but just kind of seeing what happens this week. And he might be, kind of depends on what happens with the Warren injury, but someone worth looking at. And Arthur Smith is there at offensive coordinator. When they were together in Atlanta, when Smith was the head coach, Patterson had a role. So there's a little chemistry there. George Pickens didn't really have a great game for fantasy, but that's just kind of how it's going to be with him. He's a really talented player with not the best quarterback play and a team that wants to run and play defense, but he saw 7 targets, turned into 5 for 57, 8.2 points. He was a wide receiver 45. Someone that you're probably just going to want to put in your lineups most weeks just to get those explosive games. Because, maybe you have other options, but, if you play that game, you could end up leaving him on the bench with a big game. Calvin Austin, 5 targets, 4 for 95 and a touchdown. He had a 55-yard catch in there. So that was kind of random, but he is a name that is in that receiving core. He's probably the second person I would want there. He was a wide receiver 13 on the week, 17.5 points. I wouldn't chase it. I don't think he's going to be relevant most weeks, but he had a big game there. And he has that big play in his arsenal. Pat Freiermuth at tight end saw 5 targets, turned into 4 for 33. It's kind of been what he's doing so far this year. Not really much. No touchdowns, I believe. He's my tight end in my guillotine league that I'm still in, luckily, but he's been very, very not underwhelming, 5.3 points. It hasn't been great. And then on the other side of the ball, Justin Herbert, 12 of 18, 125 yards and a touchdown. He left this game with an injury. He could miss some time. That's going to hurt this offense, but Herbert is not someone that I'm trying to start anyways, because they do not want to air it out. Their weapons aren't great and they want to run the ball and play defense. This was a tough matchup for J.K. Dobbins, so hopefully you had better options, but he is still the guy that I want there. I wouldn't overreact. He was the running back 39 on the week with 6.9 points in half PPR. They get the Chiefs in week 4, then a bye week. But I would still hold on to him, and he is going to be the guy that you want to play over Gus Edwards. So J.K. Dobbins had 15 for 44 on the ground. He also had 3 catches on 3 targets for 10 yards, whereas Gus Edwards only saw 3 carries for 9 yards in this one. So it's kind of looking like they're really turning this backfield over to Dobbins. Quentin Johnson, after a big week 2, he only saw 2 targets in this game, but he caught them both for 44 yards and a touchdown. These are not the type of metrics I want to rely on, but he's going to have his weeks probably where he comes down with a touchdown and is startable. He was the wide receiver 29, 11.4 points. And Ladd McConkey didn't work out for the young lad. 3 for 44 through the air on 6 targets. The passing game production is going to be a little inconsistent here. Disley and Hurst are kind of both getting targets at tight end. Disley was 3 for 19 on 3 targets. Hayden Hurst was 2 for 15 on 2 targets. So as of right now, you can maybe spot start Quentin Johnson or Ladd McConkey. I wouldn't really want to. And then J.K. Dobbins out of the backfield. And other than that, backfield's pretty simple here. The team's pretty simple in terms of fantasy. And for the Steelers, maybe you start Fields, you can start Najee, you can start Pickens, and maybe Freiermuth if you're desperate. Before we move on to the next game here, please make sure to drop a like if you're watching on the YouTube, or if you can like it wherever you're enjoying the podcast, or make sure to follow and or subscribe wherever you are listening. We're going to go move on to the next game. This was a surprising one. This is the one that knocked me out of my survivor pool. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home against the Broncos. The Buccaneers kind of got destroyed here, 26-7. Bo Nix was 25 of 36, 216 yards, no touchdowns through the air, but he did run one in. He was 9 for 47 and a touchdown on the ground. So he definitely has wheels. Like, he is a runner. He's a runner. He's a track star. He was the quarterback 13 on the week. So that's good to see some life out of him. Tyler Bidet, it's pronounced Bidet, not Batty or Beatty, but he was the leading rusher for the Broncos, 9 for 70. And he looked like he had some juice. I saw he had a 43-yard run where he looked pretty speedy and he burst through the hole. So Javonte Williams continues to struggle. 5 for 12 on the ground. Jaleel McLaughlin was 5 for 7. So Bidet is someone that's worth picking up in deeper leagues. I tried to pick him up in Dynasty. I think I bid like 33. We have $200 budgets. I think I bid like $33 on him, and there was another team that bid like 50 something, and I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad idea because this running game is struggling, and for them to have a burst like that is huge. And I have NFL Red Zone and I have the Sunday Ticket, but it's hard to watch every single game at once. But I did hear that Bidet was in there kind of late in the game, where they were kind of trying to ice the game a little bit. So that tells me that Sean Payton has the trust of this guy, so he might carve himself out a role moving forward. So definitely someone that is worth at least keeping an eye on and maybe picking up if you have the roster space or if you're in like a really deep league. That was way too much time spent on the Broncos backfield, which is disgusting. But Cortland Sutton here, he had himself a nice game. 11 targets turned into 7 for 68. So I had Sutton and I had Hopkins on my Dynasty bench. And the guy that I started over him, I was like, man, I shouldn't have done it because he was in a later game, but we'll talk about him later. But it was definitely the right call not playing Sutton or Hopkins, even though they did fine. But Sutton, you really like seeing 11 targets and coming down with 7 of 68. Rookie quarterback play can be rough for wide receivers, but it's good to see Nix and Sutton connecting. He had 10.3 points in half PPR, wide receiver 38. You'll take that for Cortland Sutton. After that, I really don't want to start anyone. Like Lil Jordan Humphrey was the second leading receiver with 37 yards on 6 catches, saw 8 targets. Josh Reynolds caught both of his targets for 36 yards. Javonte added 4 for 29 on 4 targets. Troy Franklin saw 5 targets, 2 for 11. Like Adam Troutman was 1 for 13. There's just a lot of names in here where it's like, I'm just avoiding it. Maybe spot starting Cortland Sutton, and that's pretty much it. Even in this backfield now, there's really no one that you can trust. Like Bidet is worth monitoring, and Sutton is really a reluctant wide receiver play in a good matchup potentially. That's really the only scenario that I would even be looking their way. On the other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield did not have a very good game here. He was 25 of 33, 163 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. So yeah, definitely not what we were looking for out of Baker. He was a quarterback 27 on the week. Interesting note here in the backfield though. So Rachaad White, highly drafted running back. He was really great for fantasy last year. It's been a struggle for him on the ground last year and this year, and those inefficiencies have just continued. He's a great pass catcher, but he was 6 for 17 on the ground, average of 2.8 yards a carry. But Bucky Irving, the rookie that they drafted this year, he came in and was 9 for 70 on the ground. Kind of like Tyler Bidet, where like, the starters just couldn't get it going on the ground. And both of these young guys came in and they ripped off some chunk runs. And Bucky Irving is probably going to have a role moving forward. And I don't know if he's ever going to outright take the job from Rachaad White, but there is definitely reason to panic if you have Rachaad White. And I just don't think he's going to return on his draft value at this point, unless, Bucky goes down and they really feed Rachaad White targets. But Bucky Irving is also a good pass catcher. He saw 3 for 14 through the air. Rachaad White saw 6 targets, turned into 5 for 18. So he does have that pass catching ability. But yeah, he was 6 points. Running back 42. Rachaad White, everybody. I called for the Chris Godwin career resurgence, and it is definitely happening. Good call, FFP. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 21 on the week, 14.3 points in half PPR, 6 for 53 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Love, love, love it. My dynasty team loves it. I wish I had him in redraft somewhere. I don't think I drafted him anywhere, actually. Maybe one league, but I don't think so. K. Dotton, he does this sometimes. 7 for 47 on 8 targets. Not chasing it, but sometimes he has weeks. The Vance Joseph Broncos defense sometimes gives up production to the tight end position. I believe I've targeted that defense a couple times with streamers, and sometimes it hasn't worked out this year. But then, of course, K. Dotton gets in there and lights him up. Back-to-back disappointing games for Mike Evans, who was only 2 for 17 on 3 targets. He was getting the Patrick Surtain treatment at cornerback, though, so I wouldn't overreact. If you can buy low on Mike Evans, I would. This was just a tough matchup for him. And he's been a guy who, in tough matchups, he can kind of disappear. Definitely more touchdown dependent, but I do think those touchdowns will be coming in different weeks. Moving on to the Raiders and the Panthers. So this was a crazy game. The Panthers got the win over the Raiders on the road, 36-22. Both teams are now 1-2. Bryce Young bench for the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton comes in and lights it up. This is the first good offensive game the Panthers have had in the last year and 2 games since they drafted Bryce Young, it seems like. Andy Dalton was 26 of 37, 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. Andy Dalton was quarterback 8 on the week with 24.6 points. Not someone that I would have started, but hopefully you picked him up like in 2 quarterback leagues, or he was a free agent in our dynasty league, so I picked him up this week just because I have Jalen Hurts, but then it's Trevor Lawrence and Stafford behind him, so it's like if Andy Dalton continues to start and play well, he might be my quarterback too, But yeah, he was awesome. I believe he was the first quarterback to throw for 303 all season. I believe someone did it on like the Monday night game or maybe a Sunday night game. I can't remember, but I think it was the Monday night game, one of the 2 Monday night games. But yeah, at the time I remember seeing a stat like it was the first time a quarterback did that all year. So, I think they could help Bryce Young a little bit more with some of the stuff around him, but Andy Dalton came in and just lit it up. So it's not all just the team around him being bad, Chuba Hubbard came in with the offense clicking. He was one of the guys that I highlighted in the offseason as a really good 0 running back target, and it hadn't worked out to this point. But with the offense clicking, he saw 21 carries, turned into 114 yards. He also saw 5 targets and caught all of them for 55 yards and a touchdown. I played him in some DraftKings lineups, and it definitely worked out. He was running back 5 on the week, 25.4 points. Miles Sanders only saw 7 for 17 on the ground, did run a touchdown in, and he saw 2 targets, caught them both for 13 yards. So Chuba Hubbard, Dalton is going to be the starter moving forward. I don't know if they're ever going to go back to Bryce Young, but as long as Dalton is in there and this offense is clicking, Chuba becomes, someone that's worth starting until the rookie Jonathan Brooks gets back there. Deontay Johnson had his best game of the year by far. They brought him in the offseason, and Bryce Young was not able to get him the ball. And in this game, he exploded. He was a wide receiver 6 with 22.2 points in half PPR, 8 for 122 and a touchdown through the air on 14 targets. So Deontay Johnson is someone that is startable moving forward, especially with Adam Thielen injuring his hamstring in this game. He was put on injured reserve. He saw 5 targets, turned into 3 for 40 and a touchdown. He actually hurt himself on his touchdown reception. So it was kind of gangster to still catch it. But as a Vikings fan, I'm always a big Thielen guy, even though he left us. So hopefully he gets better and he's back on the field. But this opens up the door for Deontay to really carve out that alpha role, and for rookie Xavier Legette to get more targets. That's a name that I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about, but with no Thielen there, if Legette does carve out a bigger role, I know they're not necessarily the same player, but I think Deontay Johnson kind of fits more what Thielen does, so they might kind of Deontay might do his thing, Legette might kind of be like that outside deep threat type of guy. There's this potential where it's been a few games now, there's some targets to go around with no Thielen. Maybe Legette is someone that's worth picking up and seeing what happens. Only 3 targets, turned into 2 for 42 in this one, but he was highly drafted and they brought him in to be relevant. So hopefully they can get him going. Jonathan Mingo, for what it's worth, also saw 4 targets in this game, turned into 3 for 18. So he could be in the way of Leggett. We'll see. Then for the Raiders, it was just ugly. Gardner Minshew, 18 of 28 for 214 and a touchdown, also threw 1 pick. Aiden O'Connell got in there, was 9 for 12, 82 and a touchdown. Zamir White continues to just be dreadful for fantasy, 10 for 34. Really just not working out. Alexander Madison got in there, was 3 for 7 on the ground. He got a touchdown, 3 for 37 through the air. Madison just keeps scoring. Like, it's so weird. Like, with the Vikings, he never scored. He had a couple like receiving touchdowns, but yeah, Madison is finding the end zone, but still not someone I'm relying on, because even with those touchdowns, he's not putting up much production for fantasy. Trey Tucker, maybe someone you haven't heard of before, but he's a receiver for the Raiders. Obviously, you have Devontae Adams and you have Jacoby Myers there, but and Brock Bowers at tight end, but Trey Tucker is kind of the next option there. He's sort of a deep threat. Saw 9 targets in this game, turned into 7 for 96 and a touchdown. Not someone I'm chasing, except maybe in like really deep leagues or dynasty leagues. Like, I traded him away in dynasty because I was kind of competing. I traded him and like a draft pick and some stuff for some kind of compete now assets versus and traded away some kind of younger rebuilding assets. And Trey Tucker was one of those guys. So yeah, he had a solid little week. Someone that could be a name we hear later on, but as the number 4 option in the receiving game, probably, if he's behind Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers and all that. And obviously Devontae Adams, probably not someone worth chasing, but wide receiver 8 on the week with 19.1 points. And I would not be surprised if he had at least 1 or 2 more kind of big games this year. Jacoby Myers, 7 for 62 on 9 targets, also got in the end zone. I dropped him in all the leagues I had him in, which was like 2. Well, I dropped him in 1, and then I traded him and Gus Edwards for Terry McLaurin before week 1. Terry and Jacoby both finally had good games here, so and Gus Edwards seems to be kind of irrelevant at this point, but I think I would rather have Terry McLaurin. But yeah, Jacoby's going to have some games. Brock Bowers disappointed a little bit. 4 targets turned into 3 for 41. He was one of my starts of the week, and it didn't really work out, but I mean, he was a tight end 15 on the week. Brock Bowers and then Brock Wright. That's the order. Tight end 15, tight end 16. Bowers, Wright, 5.6, 5.4. Devontae Adams, disappointing game, 4 for 40 on 9 targets. The coach came out and said some people were making business decisions. I don't know who that's about. Some people were speculating it was Devontae Adams. Some were saying there were some defenders that weren't really going all out. And the coach said that, there might be some repercussions from that. So who knows, man? The Raiders situation just isn't great. Moving on to the next game, the Seahawks are now 3-0 after taking down the Dolphins 24-3. Dolphins are now 1-2. No Tua. Skylar Thompson also got hurt in this one. I heard they might bring in Tyler Huntley or someone as a veteran quarterback because Tim Boyle would be the next man up. But for the Seahawks, Geno Smith didn't have a great game for fantasy, but he wasn't really asked to do much here. I did start him in a league and it didn't work out, but he was 26 of 34, 289 and 1. Also threw a couple picks, but he was a quarterback 21 on the week, so that's not great. Zach Charbonnet filling in for Kenneth Walker, who missed another game. He was 18 of 91 on the ground, ran in 2 touchdowns. He also saw 4 targets that turned into 3 for 16 through the air. So as long as Kenneth Walker is out, Charbonnet is going to be worth starting. He was a running back 6 on the week, 24.2 points. And as soon as Kenneth Walker comes back, I'm probably not going to be looking to start Charbonnet. DK Metcalf, one of my guys, he had a 71-yard bomb touchdown here. He was 4 for 104 and a touchdown on 6 targets. So, like I said, they didn't really need to throw it too much in this game. So I would like him to not need that bomb touchdown to be good for fantasy and hopefully see more than 4 receptions. But in a game like this, it's good to know that a guy like Metcalf can be a part of the reason that team is blowing the other team out and can get that long bomb touchdown and kind of have a good week on one play alone. If this game was competitive, I think he probably would have saw more work, but he was a wide receiver 9 with 18.4 points. So very good play there. I told you guys in the last episode, or I can't remember what episode it was, but I told you don't overreact to Metcalf having that rough week against the Broncos. Kind of like I'm telling you the same thing about Mike Evans against the Broncos. Like Patrick Surtain is he's a good corner. Like in week 1, Metcalf wasn't great. He's been the wide receiver, wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 9 ever since. In week 1, he was a wide receiver 63. Surtain is a tough matchup. I'm just going to say that. Noah Fant at tight end. I once made him a start of the week and he did nothing, but in this matchup, he showed up 6 for 60 on 6 targets. Where was that finish? Let's see. He was a tight end, 6 on the week, 9 points, 6 for 60. Gotta love the tight end position. Tyler Lockett really disappeared in week 2, where JSN stole the show, but in week 3, it flipped right back to Tyler Lockett kind of being that number 2. He saw 8 targets, turned into 5 for 46. JSN only 3 targets, caught them all for 39 yards. These are just guys that neither of them I want to start. Metcalf is the guy I want. I think you can roll the dice with Lockett or JSN if you're really desperate, but hopefully you have better options. And then for the Dolphins, Skylar Thompson was 13 of 19 for 107, no touchdowns, no picks. He got injured in this one. Tim Boyle came in 7 of 13, 79 yards. Devon Achane, still no Raheem Mostert in this game, but Achane was 11 for 30 on the ground. He saw 5 targets, turned into 3 for 28. So this offense definitely struggled, and that affected, Devon Achane, who's the running back 36 on the week with 7.3 points. Jalen Wright got in there 2 for 17. Jeff Wilson Jr. 3 for 14. So Achane is still just kind of like leading the way, and the other guys are kind of irrelevant. And the whole offense struggled. Even Tyreek Hill, man, he saw 5 targets, turned into 3 for 40. It's going to be a struggle, until Tua gets back or if they sign someone. And Tua might be out for a long time because he has some nasty concussions. But Tyreek Hill only 5.5 points in half PPR. The wide receiver 58. Jalen Waddle, someone that hopefully you were able to bench. He was only 4 for 26 on 5 targets. Wide receiver 67 with 4.6 points. And yeah, it's definitely an ugly situation there. I'd still be starting Achane, and I'm still probably forced to start Tyreek Hill. Waddle is definitely sittable if you have better options, and hopefully they can bring in a veteran that can at least just distribute the ball to some degree, Moving on to a crazy game where the Ravens traveled to the Dallas Cowboys. Baltimore Ravens won this game 28 to 25 over. I really struggled to read that. Holy cow. Baltimore Ravens beat the Dallas Cowboys on the road 28 to 25. Both teams 1-2. So both teams got off to a bad start record-wise. If the Ravens lost this one, they would have been 0-3, which would have been a disaster. But now both teams are at 1-2. Lamar Jackson was 12 of 15 for 182 and 1 through the air. He also added 14 for 87 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Quarterback 4 on the week with 26 points, according to Fantasy Pro Scoring. And then Derrick Henry, man. He's one of those guys that I traded for in Dynasty as like a win now type of guy. I think it was like Oshivas in a second or something like that. And so far, so good. He's been really solid. 29.9 points in half PPR, literally 1 yard away from the 30 burger. Running back 3 on the week behind 2 guys that did have 30 bombs. Saquon and then 1 guy that we'll talk about later. But yeah, Derrick Henry was 25 for 151 and 2. He also saw 1 target and caught it for 23 yards. I remember I saw that play and I was like, dude, just give him like a couple of those every game and he'll be a beast. Justice Hill still had his role as the backup there, 5 for 33 on the ground. He also saw 2 targets and caught them both for 21 yards. So could have some value here and there. If something happened to Henry, he'd go up in value. But yeah, in the passing game, it was kind of ugly. Nelson Aguilar caught 1 for 56 on 1 target. Charlie Kohler 1 for 30. Rashad Bateman was 3 for 28 and a touchdown on 4 targets. So you're probably not starting him. And then Zay Flowers, who I traded for, like I said, he was only 3 for 20 on 4 targets. And then Isaiah Likely saw 1 target, 4 yards. Mark Andrews, 1 target, 0 yards. I'm starting to get very worried about Mark Andrews. I don't know what is going on with that guy, but it is not working out. Week 1, it was kind of like, don't overreact. Week 2, it was like, okay, things are looking better. And then he comes out and he gooses. He wasn't running hardly any routes. He wasn't involved. I don't know if there's an injury or what's going on, but it is very concerning. I think you're probably just going to have to keep starting him. Unless you have like a actual, if you were able to get like a Jake Ferguson type of guy or like who else? Like, I don't know if for whatever reason you had Bowers as well, or, it's just a spooky situation. But if you have him, you probably don't have a better option. So you're probably going to have to start him. Like, I don't know if I would be starting like, Noah Fant or Mike Gesicki over him at this point. So I'd probably just stick with Andrews and hope they figure it out. But this game was a blowout win. for the Ravens, even though they only won by 3, 28-25. They were up by so much, and then the Cowboys scored 19 points in the fourth quarter, including a recovered onside kick. Dak Prescott was terrible for fantasy until that fourth quarter, where he had a ton of garbage time points and finished as the quarterback 2 on the week with nearly 30 fantasy points, according to Fantasy Pro scoring here. But he was 28 of 51, which is not great. 379 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. He also added 2 for 7 and a touchdown on the ground. So it did work out for fantasy. I have him in a few leagues, and I was like, okay, thank you. That worked out. Rico Dowdle was the lead back here. I don't know if Zeke is getting phased out or if it was more of a thing where they were losing the whole time. So if they were winning, maybe Zeke would be more of like that grinded out type of guy. But Rico Dowdle still wasn't great for fantasy. 8 for 32 on the ground. He did see 5 targets, which is nice. Turned into 3 for 24. Zeke only three carries, turned into 6 yards. Deuce Vaughn got a couple carries for 5 yards. So the backfield is a mess right now. And Jake Ferguson came back from that injury, and he actually was really solid. He was one of my guys heading into the season. He was my tight end my guy. And even though I didn't draft him anywhere, I really liked him a lot. And he came back from that injury and put up 6 for 95 on 11 targets. So he was a tight end 3 on the week with 12.5 points. So that is awesome to see. Hopefully he can fix this tight end landscape here. CeeDee Lamb was 4 for 67 on 7 targets. So a little disappointing, but you're obviously not going to go away from CeeDee Lamb, who every wide receiver pretty much has bad weeks, but he only 6.7 PPR, half PPR points here. He must have had a fumble or something in there too, because I think that's how that math would work. Let me just pull it up here. Yep, 1 fumble lost. Other than that, I mean, Turpin got in there, was 3 for 51 and a touchdown. Jalen Tolbert has a roll, 3 for 42 and a touchdown on 5 targets. But Brandon Cooks saw 6 targets, only 2 for 16. So after CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, we need some more clarity to have confidence starting, people from this backfield or maybe number 2 or number 3 receivers there. So yeah, they have some things to work out there, and it might just be kind of messy until, things just develop. We're trucking along here with the Sunday games. The Rams at home upset the 49ers 27-24. Rams scored 13 points in the fourth quarter, it looks like. Well, I was watching the end of that game, and it was crazy. Both teams had a lot of injuries, but I just thought that the Rams were dealing with more injuries and more positions where I didn't think they had a chance, and they actually did win it. Stafford was 16 of 25, 221 and a touchdown. Kyren Williams was 24 for 89 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. He also added 2 for 27 and a touchdown through the air. So he was that other running back that I was talking about that put up a 30.6 points. He was the running back 2, only behind Saquon Barkley and ahead of Derrick Henry. But yeah, Kyren Williams is the guy. There was speculation, is Blake Corum going to threaten his role? Absolutely not. In fact, Corum didn't get a touch. It was Ronnie Rivers that saw 2 for 9 behind Kyren Williams. And yeah, obviously no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. Tyler Higbee still recovering from that. It was an ACL injury last year. So these guys are piecing it together. Tutu Atwell was the leading receiver. And he tied for the lead in targets with 5 targets, turned into 4 for 93. Demarcus Robinson disappointed, only 1 for 32 on 4 targets. Jordan Whittington saw 3 targets, caught them all for 28 yards. And then Colby Parkinson, a tight end, 5 targets, tied with Tutu Atwell for the team lead, only turned into 3 for 21. And then Tyler Johnson, 3 for 20. So between Tutu, Demarcus Robinson, Whittington, and Tyler Johnson, it's just, who do you want to start? Probably nobody. Maybe one of them will have a good week here and there, but it's going to be hard to predict. And then for the 49ers, Brock Purdy had a great week. 22 of 30, 292 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was the quarterback 5 on the week, 25.8 points. And then Jordan Mason filling in for Christian McCaffrey, who is traveling to Germany to get some special treatment for his Achilles stuff. Man, my dynasty team needs him to at least come back for the playoffs. But Mason was 19 for 77. He also added 2 for 11 through the air, so he's still the guy there. He didn't have his week-winning performance like he has been having, but he was still the running back 25 with 9.8 points. As you guys have probably heard, I dropped him in Dynasty because, Mitchell was the backup. They drafted Garendo. Even though I had McCaffrey, I was like, well, Mason is the third stringer or maybe in fourth stringer after Garendo got drafted, and I need to pick some people up. And then all this happens. Someone else picked up Mason, and I don't have him. So it definitely is tragic. If you have McCaffrey, I hope you have Mason. And this could be a buy low opportunity where he didn't have like a great game. So maybe the manager of Mason is like, okay, I'm willing to part with him. I gotta test that theory. Let me send a trade quick. But I should have noted Purdy also had a 10 for 41 on the ground. So that was awesome to see. But yeah, you know how I mentioned how Cortland Sutton and DeAndre Hopkins had really good weeks in those noon games? And I was like, oh man, I should have started one of those guys, you know, dealing with that McCaffrey injury. Well, you know who I started instead? Picked up and started? JAUAN Jennings, wide receiver of the 49ers. He was the wide receiver 1 on the week. He had 41 points in half PPR. 41, that's not a typo, 41 points. He saw 12 targets, caught 11 of them for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Count them, 3 touchdowns. I made Brandon Ayuk a start of the week, but in that segment, I did also say JAUAN Jennings could be started in kind of deeper leagues or DraftKings, like daily fantasy lineup. So I am going to take the W there. But yeah, JAUAN Jennings had a week-winning week, and I know he was on a lot of benches, so hopefully you started him. And if not, as long as Deebo Samuel remains out, he's going to have a role. George Kittle missed this game too, so we'll see if he comes back. But I'm not expecting this type of performance every week. But yeah, great performance out of Jennings. And then Brandon Ayuk was 5 for 48. He saw 10 targets, but it just didn't amount to much. He really doesn't look great after holding out with that contract situation. You know, I had someone comment on one of my clips, like I do my start of the week video and then I kind of clip a few players and put them on social media to kind of like show off the video. And, you know, in the Ayuk video, I talked about Ayuk, and then I showed the part at the end where I'm like, you could also play Jennings like in deeper leagues or DraftKings. And someone commented like, you couldn't have been more wrong. And I'm like, okay, dude, like I feel like the process was right. Like I targeted the right matchup. I mentioned JAUAN Jennings as like a good play. If you played him in DraftKings, you probably won $1 billion. You're welcome. Oh, but sorry. Him going off for 11 and 175 and 3. Sorry that took a little production away from Ayuk, who still, hey man, I thought I'm cool with my process. He saw 10 targets still. Maybe he's a good player. I mean, maybe he's a little rusty, but I don't know, 10 targets from Ayuk. I mean, I'm going to take that most weeks. He just kind of has to get it put together. And after that, yeah, it's pretty much irrelevant after those guys. Moving on to the next game here. We're almost done with the Sunday games. We're almost done, ladies and jellyfish. Arizona Cardinals hosting the Detroit Lions. Lions get the win 20-13. The Lions are 2-1. Cardinals are 1-2. Jared Goff, another not super great game for fantasy. 15.6 points, quarterback 19. He was 18 of 23, which is solid, but 199, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Added 6 rushing yards for what it's worth, but the whole at home and in a dome narrative for Goff has not been true so far this year. David Montgomery, man, he had another fantastic week. 19.7 points in half PPR, was a running back 8. He had 23 for 105 and 1 on the ground. I have him in one league, in my auction league, where I got him for like $2 on a $200 budget at the end of the draft. And I already had like stud running backs. I had like Kamara, James Cook, and James Conner. And, you know, maybe I definitely should have played Montgomery over Conner this week. But I think most weeks it's like I'd probably start Conner. But it's like I feel like I want to get Montgomery in this lineup. But now the Cardinals, I think they get Washington, right? So it's like, it's really tough. I haven't played Montgomery any week, and he's just been absolutely awesome. And yeah, the Cardinals are taking on Washington this week. So it might be another week where Montgomery just goes off on my bench. But not to ignore the arguably better running back here, but Jahmyr Gibbs, he was 16 for 83 on the ground. Montgomery also added 3 for 17 through the air, for what it's worth. So he was the running back 16, running back 12 on the week with 16.3 points. He also added 20. Oh, that's right. That was the hook and ladder play, right? Was that the play that did the hook and ladder? Was that game? I think it was. Okay, I was looking at the hook and ladder because Gibbs is listed as 0 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown. Yes. Okay, I'm looking at the clip right now. So they threw it to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then they did a hook and ladder play where he caught it and then immediately lateraled it to Jahmyr Gibbs, who ran it in for a touchdown. That play was sick. I remember watching that. But yeah, so he doesn't get credit for the reception, but he gets 20 receiving yards and a touchdown. That's very interesting. It's also concerning he had no targets outside of that hook and ladder, which doesn't even count as a target. So I think that would help your yards per... Well, would that help your yards per reception numbers? Because it goes to your receiving totals, but you don't get I don't know how that works. That's weird. But Amon-Ra had a good game, 7 for 75 and a touchdown on 8 targets. He was definitely due for a bounce back game here after a rough week 1. But yeah, so he finished as the wide receiver 15 on the week. And then last week it wasn't, it was 11 for 118, I guess. So that was a good week too. So week 1 was really his only kind of somewhat rough week. Sam Laporta, though, another really tough game here. He only saw 2 targets. He caught them both for 36 yards at least. But yeah, there's reason to be concerned here about these tight ends. A lot of them are not performing. He was a tight end 21 with 4.6 points. So you're still starting him. But I mean, Brock Wright. Brock Wright outscored Sam Laporta at tight end. 5 targets, 4 for 34 for Brock Wright. Right next to Brock Bowers, like we talked about. Man, that's... Oof. I mean, yeah, I didn't draft any top tight ends other than one league. I had, oh my God, Trey McBride. I forgot his name for a sec. So he's someone that's kind of looked okay, but also in addition to that, Sam Laporta is dealing with a low ankle sprain. So hopefully that's not serious, but something to monitor. Then Jamison Williams came back to earth a little bit, only 1 for 9 on 3 targets, 1 carry for -7 yards. We kind of expected like this run wasn't going to continue, but I thought it would come with Sam Laporta having a good game, which it didn't. For the Cardinals, man, this game was kind of disappointing too. Like kind of like that Eagles and Saints game. Those were 2 games that I was targeting to be high scoring, and neither was. Kyler Murray was the quarterback 17 on the week with 15.8 points, 21 of 34, 207, and 1. Also had an interception. He added 5 for 45 on the ground, which is nice. James Conner, definitely a very rough game for Conner. It's a tough matchup against the Lions. In hindsight, I probably should have started Montgomery over Conner, but Conner's usually such a good play and involved in the passing game where I thought he'd be fine, but he was only 3 points in half PPR, running back 54. He added 9 for 17 on the ground and only 1 for 8 on 1 target through the air. So yeah, that's definitely tough. Marvin Harrison Jr. had another great game, 5 for 64 and a touchdown, 11 targets. He was the wide receiver 19 on the week with 14.9 points. So very scary week 1 where I believe he had 4 yards, but it's been great since then. And then Michael Wilson was the second leading receiver here. 8 for 64, 9 targets. I thought Greg Dortch might have a better game. So Michael Wilson had 10.4 points in half PPR. I thought Greg Dortch would have a decent game because the Lions were supposedly a good matchup for slot receivers. But Dortch, he saw 6 targets and only turned into 3 for 35 though. And then Zay Jones, someone to just kind of put on your radar. They brought him in free agency. He was suspended for I believe 5 games. When he comes back, I don't know where he's going to slot in. He might have to climb his way up the depth chart once he gets back. If he were able to pass the Dortch or Michael Wilson, but someone to kind of monitor in deeper leagues or like in dynasty leagues. And then Trey McBride, 3 for 25 on 6 targets. I believe he got concussed in this game, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and I think he left early. So hopefully he plays. Obviously, if he's not ready, he shouldn't go out there. But yeah, if he's I'm in a situation where with Njoku and Trey McBride, and I think probably Sam Laporta is also listed as questionable. It's like you're kind of holding on to these guys, and you can't really put them on your IR until they're ruled out, and they're not ruled out yet. So it's just kind of like it's like, okay, like let's make a decision here. Is he playing or not? But Yeah, obviously, you don't want people to rush back from a concussion. That would be bad. And then we're finally at the Sunday night game, ladies and gentlemen. The Kansas City Chiefs in Atlanta against the Falcons get the win 22-17. Chiefs are 3-0. The Falcons are 1-2. Patrick Mahomes, 26 of 39, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Where did he finish this week? So he was a quarterback 15 with 17.4 points. I'm just going to say it. Mahomes is not an auto start at this point. I would probably be starting him in most leagues, but there's a good chance, like, if you drafted Jaden Daniels later in your draft after drafting Mahomes, like, you're not crazy to put him in there over Mahomes. Like, Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion, but for fantasy, he's just not being asked to air it out, and his weapons are they're okay. Rashee Rice is there, but Travis Kelce just doesn't appear to be the player that he once was, and it's just he's as soon as I say that, though, he's going to go off. So let me take the heat. I'll say not to start him, and you guys can actually start him, and then he'll have like 50 points. What's his name? Isaiah Pacheco, starting running back for the Chiefs. No Isaiah Pacheco here, so Carson Steele was the lead back here. Wasn't sure how the workload distribution was going to look, but Carson Steele was the lead rusher, 17 for 72. He also had 2 targets, caught one of them for 2 yards. Samaje Perine was kind of the next man up, 6 for 25 on the ground. He was the leading pass catching running back. He saw 4 targets, turned into 3 for 15. Kind of what I was expecting is Steele would be the lead rusher and Perine would be the passing game guy. They did also sign Kareem Hunt last week, so he's going to get involved potentially, kind of make this even messier. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he should be coming back somewhat soon. I believe he's dealing with like a PTSD issue or something. So this situation could get kind of ugly if it's too crowded and if everyone is getting touches. But yeah, Carson Steele, if you streamed him, you could have done worse. I mean, he was 7.9 points. Obviously, you're not in love with that, but you do like the 17 carries. And Mahomes added 6 for 17 on the ground too. He had a 15-yard run in there. And then in the receiving game, Rashee Rice continues to look like one of the steals of the draft. I really loved his value. I just wasn't able to draft him anywhere, but hopefully you did. I think I talked about him a little bit on a podcast or two. Hopefully you took that advice and got him somewhere, because 14 targets, 12 for 110 and a touchdown. Wide receiver 5 on the week, 23.1 points. He is just absolutely electric right now for fantasy. He's everything for this offense, and he is the wide receiver 4 on the season, behind only, let's see, he's behind Malik Neighbors, JAUAN Jennings, and Chris Godwin. Am I seeing that right? Wow. Crazy. JAUAN Jennings is up there after just 1 game, so like, it's kind of a small sample size and one big game, but wow. Yeah, if you have him, congratulations. I remember he got sniped before me in at least 1 or 2 drafts. Travis Kelce, another not good week for fantasy, man. 4 for 30, saw 5 targets, but just not doing much with him. Had 5 points, tight end 19 on the week. Kind of like with a lot of these other guys, you're probably still starting him, but temper expectations. Juju back with the Chiefs. He actually caught a touchdown here. Saw 3 targets, turned into 2 for 17 and a touchdown. Rookie Xavier Worthy had a disappointing game. 4 targets, turned into 2 for 17. He also added 3 for 13 on the ground. But yeah, didn't get much going there. And then for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins was 20 for 29, 230 and 1, and an interception. Yeah, not great for fantasy. Quarterback 23 on the week with 12.1. Bijan Robinson, Algier was actually their leading rusher in terms of yardage, so he was 7 for 32. Tyler Algier was. Bijan Robinson, though, was the clear lead back there and the guy you want. He was 16 of 31 and a touchdown. He also added 2 for 21 through the air. So not Bijan's best game by any stretch, but he was still the running back 17 with 12.2 points. So he's a guy that even in his down weeks is going to probably fall in the end zone or maybe get a couple catches and be all right. And then Drake London, 6 for 67 and a touchdown on 9 targets. This offense doesn't look super perfect yet, but it is kind of coming together. And it is cool that, Drake London is finally putting together some games here with a good quarterback. He was a wide receiver 18 on the week, 15.7 points in half PPR. My dynasty team needs him. I have a couple of redraft teams with him, so big Drake London guy over here. And then Darnell Mooney, I took him late in some leagues, and I'm kind of glad that I have him in at least 1 or 2 leagues. He's looking like a solid kind of bench play with bye weeks and injuries and stuff. He saw 8 targets, caught all 8 for 66 yards, 10.6 points in half PPR, wide receiver 35. You can do a lot worse than that off the waiver wire. So if he's out there, definitely worth picking up. And then Kyle Pitts, 2 for 59 on 5 targets. He had a big 50-yard catch in there, and he was a tight end 9 on the week, 6.9 points. But obviously, we're still hoping for more out of Kyle Pitts, and I will likely be starting Dallas Goedert over Kyle Pitts this week. Especially, if AJ Brown and or Devontae Smith are out, it's kind of a smash play. All right, we're going to move on to the 2 Monday night games, and then we're out of here. So Buffalo Bills hosting the Jacksonville Jags. This game was over before it started. Buffalo destroyed them 47-10. The Bills are now 3-0. The Jaguars are 0-3. It looks like the Bills had, 34 points at halftime, and Jacksonville had 34-3. That's crazy. Wow. I was watching this game, and it was just a slaughter. Josh Allen is just unbelievable. He was a quarterback 1 on the week, 23 of 30, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he could have had more, honestly. He also had a 6 for 44 on the ground, but they were winning by so much they didn't need to air it out. I honestly believe if they just tried to keep scoring, he could have probably set the NFL record for passing touchdowns, which I believe is 7. I think he could have had 8 for sure. James Cook, he's looking like one of the steals of the draft. I was able to get him in a few places. He was one of my favorite picks, and he's been awesome. He had 11 for 39, got in the end zone though, and then he had 4 for 48 on 5 targets through the air. That one target he didn't have was a dropped touchdown, so that would have been huge for his production. He was a running back 11 on the week with 16.7, but if you would have added like the yardage and the catch and the touchdown, he would have been like a top 7, top 8 play for sure. So he's awesome. Ray Davis got a touchdown, 7 for 22 and a touchdown, backup rookie running back. And then in the receiving game, Khalil Shakir led the way, 6 for 72 on 6 targets and a touchdown. He was the wide receiver 17 with 16.2 points in half PPR. Dalton Kincaid, we had a sighting of him, so that's good to see. He saw 5 targets, turned into 3 for 41 and a touchdown, and then the game was pretty much over. So that is encouraging that we saw his usage early on. He was a tight end 5 on the week with 11.6 points. Hopefully in a game that's more competitive throughout, he'll see kind of more involvement. Ty Johnson got in the end zone, 3 for 28 and a touchdown through the air. Also had a 3 for 18 on the ground. Keon Coleman only saw 1 target, but he caught it for a 24-yard touchdown. So if you're going to get 1 target, that's kind of the most you can do with it there. Curtis Samuel, 3 targets, turned into 3 for 22. Mac Hollins, 2 targets, 1 for 16. MVS, 2 targets, 1 for 7. So there's a lot of options here in the receiving game, but it seems like Shakir is he'll have his weeks. Keon Coleman is capable of having a week here or there as the rookie develops. And then James Cook, I just want James Cook. I want, Kincaid is going to be startable at tight end. James Cook is a stud running back, and Josh Allen is a stud that you play every week at quarterback. Trevor Lawrence just does not look good. It's just looking bad for T-Law here. Quarterback 26 on the week, 21 of 38, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Mac Jones came in there at the end of the game. It's looking rough for this offense. Travis Etienne, 11 for 68 on the ground. And he also added... Did he have any passing game production? Really? In a game they were losing? No, he had to have. I must just be missing it. He did. Okay. 6 targets, 4 for 17. So to be the running back 21 with 10.5 points in a game that you lost 10-47 and was over by the second quarter, you'll live with that. That's about as good as it gets. Unless he would have also fell in the end zone. But he's clearly the lead guy there, and the Bills are just rolling. So yes, Jacksonville looks pretty terrible, but there will be better days ahead. We have a Christian Kirk sighting, which is surprising. 10 targets, 8 for 79. He was a wide receiver 25 on the week with 11.9 points. Love that for Kirk. This is kind of the role we were thinking he would have. Brian Thomas Jr., only 5 for 48, but you love the 9 targets. And it's looking like maybe down the stretch, hopefully if the offense improves, he might have some weeks here. But he had 7.3 points. After that, I'm not really paying attention to anyone else. Like Gabe Davis saw 6 targets, turned into 2 for 18. Parker Washington is still there, 2 for 18 on 3 targets. Brendan Strange, filling in for Evan Ingram, saw 5 targets, only turned it into 2 for 12, but he did turn one of those catches into a touchdown, so he was the tight end 7 on the week because the tight end position is disgusting, and had 8.2 points in half PPR. And we finally made it to the last game of the week, ladies and gentlemen, the Commanders and the Bengals. The Bengals at home against the Commanders, and the Commanders win 38-33. The Commanders are 2-1, and the Bengals are 0-3. Wow. I mean, I know they're slow starters, but that's crazy. Jaden Daniels is looking like a cheat code. I know I've said this about a few people, but he's one of those guys that I really thought was just a steal in drafts, and for whatever reason, I just didn't get any shares of him, and he's looking awesome for fantasy. 21 of 23. I think it was like the highest completion percentage ever by a rookie, if I'm not mistaken. 254 yards, 2 touchdowns. He added 12 for 39 on the ground, quarterback 3 on the week. He's looking like an auto start. The Bengals defense does look really bad too, so I think this matchup was one to exploit more than maybe a lot of people were thinking, but most weeks he's going to be good. Like if you have him and you have like Patrick Mahomes, like, and probably starting Daniels most weeks, depending on the matchup, at least, same probably with Joe Burrow. Like if Caleb Williams, like I know Caleb Williams, was the more highly regarded NFL prospect, but Jaden Daniels, I've always said, like for fantasy, you want Daniels because he runs, and he's also getting it done in the passing game lately too. I mean, 21 of 23 is crazy. That also was good for Terry McLaurin. Like I said, I traded for him before the season started. I gave up Jacoby Myers and Gus Edwards, and it was finally good to see it pay off because I did have to start him in that league actually because I was dealing with some injuries. He was 4 for 100 and a touchdown on 6 targets. So he had that nice little bomb in there. Still, like, only 4 receptions isn't great, but he was a wide receiver 10 on the week with 18 points. So we love that. After that, Luke McCaffrey, 3 for 44. Zach Ertz at tight end continues to kind of be a gross play that, you could do worse with, but doesn't have a lot of upside. But he was 5 for 38 on 5 targets, tight end 12, 6.3 points, tied for tight end 12. Noah Brown after trading Jahan Dotson. So, we're trying to figure out who the number 2 wide receiver is. And there's probably no one you want to play after Terry, but, McCaffrey was 3 for 44. Noah Brown was 3 for 29. Diami Brown was 2 for 16. So not much there. And then at the running back position, Brian Robinson, 16 for 33 and a touchdown on the ground. He also added 1 for 4 through the air. I think he's going to be a really solid pick. I remember I picked him over Gus Edwards in one of my non-PPR leagues, and I was like, oh no, did I make a mistake? And no, Brian Robinson is definitely the guy to want there. He was the running back 22 on the week, 10.2 points. Jaden Daniels is going to run some in, and Brian Robinson isn't going to catch a ton of passes, but this offense is looking like they can move a little bit, and he's a solid player. So I think, he's a guy that's worth putting in there like as a running back 2 or flex most weeks, depending on the matchup. And Austin Eckler, he was 3 for 35 on the ground with a touchdown. He also added 2 for 22 through the air on 2 targets. He did leave this game. Was it a concussion? I believe it was a concussion, but he was the running back 16 on the week with 12.7 points. And yes, he had a concussion. So he's looking like a guy that kind of has some flex value as well when he comes back. And then on the other side, Joe Burrow, I believe I made him a start of the week, right? I did. Yep. Of course, in my TikTok clip, I highlighted Derek Carr, not Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow, my starts of the week were Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, and Derek Carr. Burrow and Dak were great. And of course, I picked Derek Carr to highlight. You can't win them all, but they were all in there in the actual video. So make sure you subscribe and watch those videos so you don't watch my singular incorrect clip that I post, and you can get the whole picture. But Joe Burrow was great for fantasy. Quarterback 7 on the week, 25.5 points, 25.4, 29 of 38, 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that was the other quarterback that threw for 303 after Andy Dalton did it. Zach Moss was 12 for 58 on the ground, ran in a touchdown. He also saw 6 targets and caught 5 of them for 39 yards. So he's looking like a real steal here. I know before the season started, I highlighted this backfield as a good value. I leaned Zach Moss, but Chase Brown also had potential to have a role. But right now, it's looking like Zach Moss is the guy that you want there. He was the running back 9 on the week with 18.2 points. Chase Brown was 7 for 62 on the ground. He also added 2 for 7 through the air on 3 targets, but not someone that I'm looking to play. And then Jamar Chase, I mean, this was kind of an obvious spot for him to kind of pop off and have his first real good game of the year. He saw 7 targets, turned into 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns. He was a wide receiver 2 on the week with 26.8 points behind only JAUAN Jennings, who went nuclear. So that's great to see out of Jamar Chase. He hadn't quite met his draft expectations for fantasy, but you know, this is what he does. He has weeks like this that win you your week, which is, you know, very valuable. He's no JAUAN Jennings, but he's good. He's pretty good compared to JAUAN. And then Andre Oshivas, even with T. Higgins back in the lineup, saw 7 targets, turned into 5 for 52. I will say I did trade away Oshivas in Dynasty, so that is probably a big reason why he is succeeding and keeps scoring touchdowns no matter what. And I think the one week he did bad was the week I played him in DraftKings, so funny enough. But he was a wide receiver 22 with 13.7 points, 5 for 57 and a touchdown. T. Higgins came back, and he was 3 for 39 on, it looks like, 6 targets. I'm going to try to pull up his actual snap percentage here because I think that would be important to know because he was coming back from an injury. So it would make sense if he didn't see, you know, 100% of the snaps. So it looks like he saw, wow, he actually saw 90%. So whereas Oshivas saw 77. So it looks like the team really did wait for him to be pretty much 100% healthy before bringing him back, which is smart, especially for a guy like Higgins who often re-injures himself. So I think there will be better games for Higgins moving forward. And then Mike Gesicki was 4 for 47 and on 5 targets. In my starts of the week video, you know, I highlighted some guys, and he was kind of my nasty play if you needed someone. And ironically enough, I mean, so he was, let me see. So who finished higher here? Let me pull up the tight end finishes here. So Mike Gesicki was my kind of gross play. And then other than that, I recommended Brock Bowers and Mark Andrews. And Mike Gesicki was the highest scorer out of all of those 3. So Gesicki was 6.7, tight end 10. Brock Bowers was 5.6, tight end 15. And then Mark Andrews was tight end infinity with 0 points. So yes, that is the week 3 recap. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a long episode, a lot of games, but we got through them all. Good luck in week 4. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening so you can become a fantasy football prodigy. And I will see you in the next one. Peace out.